Hello everyone and welcome to Community Connection, your window to the world around you. Today we have with us Paul Sophiea, and he is running for state representative for House Seat 15 in Dearborn on the Republican ticket.
Correct.
Welcome,
Yes.
Paul,
Hi.
to Community
Thank you,
Connection. It's
Siham.
wonderful to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Paul, politics, it's really heated this day and age. So tell us a little bit about your background and what your inspiration was to run for state representative.
Okay. It's been a long process of thinking through, because you don't jump in to something like this, you know, quickly or based on an impulse.
Sure.
So I talked to my wife and my kids and, you know, get their thoughts on it. And then after about 30 years, 32 years in industry, I realized I've run that course. It was a good run, but it wasn't fulfilling.
What did you do?
I was in the medical industry. I was working for 3, 4 different pharmaceutical companies, and it just came a time where there wasn't, you know, the adrenaline wasn't there anymore. So my friends are always talking about current events and what they would do. So I started thinking, well, you know, this could be something, this could be interesting, it could be a new chapter. So based on the fact that I really like the fact that individuals can get involved, individuals can make a difference in government, but then again, people in Lansing or Washington don't have all of the answers. So maybe they need somebody who's been in industry, made things work for a while, and had a family, has gone through, you know, schools and kindergartens and colleges with the kids. They can bring a perspective on it that really, really represents the voters in Dearborn, and may I say even Dearborn Heights, because we're not two different communities. You know, we're people cross over Ford Road and Telegraph all the time. So you tie one together, you tie the other together. So I think good governance starts right here locally, and I think I have a perspective on that.
What are the major issues that you're looking at? What do you think are the most pressing in terms of addressing when you're running and as a state representative?
Yeah. Well, the most pressing ones are the ones that are going to affect the local communities, and they all do that. I mean, Michigan is made up of local communities, but we have to make sure Dearborn gets its right say, Dearborn gets its share of funding for programs that are going on. If we give $1 to Lansing through taxes, we have to make sure we at least get 95 cents back, which sounds like, you know, why would he say that? Because we don't get that much back. So just to increase it another dime, 20 cents, we're getting closer to that one-on-one. So that's why I'm doing this. So the pressing things are, first of all, representing the community and every person in that community, regardless of who they are, what they are, how much education they've had or haven't had. They need to be heard, and that's why I'm doing it, because a lot of times these big issues get caught up in with big lobbyists and with the caucuses in Lansing. So I don't have a resume to try to fill. My only goal is to be honest enough to do what I think is best for the citizens of Dearborn.
The roads issue has been really huge,
Yes.
And there has been so many different, you know, variables and so many different avenues, and we really haven't reached a consensus in regards to what can be done effectively with obvious change. So, what's your perspective on that, and what do you think might be a plausible answer to what we're going through?
A plausible answer would be, there's something now with a state...
That's a loaded question for you.
Yes, it is. But, you know, this just didn't, you know, we woke up last week and this was on the table. There are some plausible answers doing it with funds that are already existing. And I would encourage anybody that is concerned about that to look at the Colbeck plan. Pat Colbeck, who's a state senator in western Wayne County. Just take a look at it. There might be some validity there that won't cost you anything. But anything that comes to fruition...
What is that? I'm sorry.
He is investigating the fact that there's already monies there, not being spent, they're being put aside, or they're earmarked for special
different
interests.
coffers instead of, okay.
In different coffers, as well as shifting some funds around into it. So that's one thing you should investigate to see if it's viable. And to me, at first glance, because I'm not in the legislature, it looks viable. That's something we should investigate first. And secondly, anything that comes down the pike would have to be fair for Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb County. The reason I'm saying that is 40% of the vehicles in the state of Michigan, and maybe eastern Washtenaw County, are in those counties. We don't get, or we won't get 40% of the money, which means our taxes are going to go up on the gas we pay, also the birthday tax, meaning when you register your car for that particular year on your birthday, you're going to pay around 20% more, but that money is not coming here. The formula is based on the miles of roads in that community versus the number of cars and the wear and tear in that community. So that just doesn't seem fair. If we have the cars here and the wear and tear is here, that's where the money should be.
So basically, if we're paying that extra 20%, I think we talked about this earlier, so a lot of that money might be going way up north, or
right,
in different areas, but may not affect us as much as we need to have that money be concentrated in our area.
Right.
So what's this? I mean, how do we bypass that, or how do we try to make a viable legislation where the monies that people are actually contributing goes to their particular roads? Wouldn't it make sense that if Sheboygan were to have those taxes or what have you, that the monies that those taxpayers contributed worked for their roads? So I mean, that should, what's good for the goose should be good for the gander. So how do we make that happen?
We have to go where the need is. So the need is where there's area of concentration of traffic.
We definitely need. I mean, potholes galore.
Yes, and the wear and tear in those areas, Sheboygan, Cadillac, those counties up north, yeah, they have the roads, but they don't have the wear and tear. They don't have the traffic. They don't have the trucks coming through there. They don't have, as many school buses. They don't have the people driving from, Oakland County down to Detroit to work, or from Detroit up to, the Chrysler headquarters, the Ford headquarters. So that's the issue. It's where the need is, and it should be based where the population is, first of all. Second of all, how would you do that? You'd need a consensus of the people that are in those three areas to come up and say, hey, you know what, let's work on the formula. That's not the way the formula is, so you'd have to work on the formula. And to be honest, it's going to be a difficult lift, but it's got to start somewhere. Before you ask people to pay their fair share, we have to determine what the fair share is and make sure we get, let's say, $1 million to fix Ford Road, something like that. That Ford Road, that $1 million will last us, because there's a lot of traffic on Ford Road. Go down by McGraw, getting on the Ford Expressway, there's bumps, there's craters, and there's all that stuff. So we don't want our money to run out. We want to make sure we're taken care of because that wear and tear is there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's a huge conversation. That you got to open the books. You got to figure out what's going on and who's participating in what. So very, very, very important discussion.
And the upper counties aren't willing to give it up either. So that's their argument. So you're going to have to do some negotiation with the people down here that are affected.
Absolutely. Roads is one major issue, and then on the other spectrum, education has been a huge conversation in regards to public education, charter schools. Reversing it to really, for me, it becomes public education becomes commerce based. So, what's your views on that, and what do you think of the future of charter schools versus what's going on in public education, and really the opportunities that all people of any economic level have to access public education?
I think the way the question was framed, to be real honest, is indicative of what some of these issues are, because they should be a bottom-up with collaboration from the top down. So what does that mean? It means that we look at education as public versus private. We look at from, the administrators versus the teachers. The real question is, how do we educate the kids? That's the starting point. That's actually the starting point and the ending point.
And which process is the most effective as well.
Well,
that's important too.
If anybody thinks that all children between the ages of kindergarten right through the 12th grade think the same way, learn the same way, should be taught the same way at the same pace throughout their 12 or 13 years, then that's kind of a misnomer. We've got to evaluate, and that's where, first of all, the parents need to be involved. They need to know their children. And if their children It could be something as simple as Dearborn. We've got a lot of schools to choose from. So if this school doesn't fit your child's personality, let's try this school. It's open and it's available. It's an option. There's not, again,
We're talking
this
about
is the
school
path.
of choice there.
Well, we could have school of choice, and it maintains the Dearborn community. And that's what it should do, maintain the community. Parents have the options. If their child, for whatever reasons, they're gifted or they need special needs or things like that, then they should have options for schools that deal specifically with that. Dearborn's got great resources, but not all of them are.
Yeah, that's
an issue with
an
education.
issue with education across
Right.
the board.
Yeah, so that's where we need to focus on. One thing I would like to do, if I had that magic wand, I would love to get input from the student teachers, people that have been through the high school, been through their 4 years of college. Maybe they're doing a research paper or a dissertation. Let them put their ideas fresh on paper to be evaluated and to be looked at where we can improve. They've gotten the rewards. They also, the scars that they suffered are new, and they're not going to be healed over by 20 years of, teaching after that. So they've got a good perspective. We need to hear that perspective, and it's something that can be formalized, should be formalized, and that perspective should be listened to and taken quite seriously. Mm-hmm. My daughter is a teacher, and some of the things that she's told me, this is her first year, she says, why are they doing this and why are they doing that? This is what I would do. And so if there's a lot of her around, get them together and let's listen.
And it makes sense to listen to someone who's actually in that atmosphere, actually doing it, knows the logistics, knows what happens, and knows what kind of decisions that are happening administratively affect the classroom and the kids. And that really is the bottom line, is the kids. And there's been a lot of things that have happened, decisions made from individuals who really haven't been in the classroom and really don't have an educational background that has, created some havoc in the classroom. I mean, we had no child left behind, and thank God that is behind us now.
Right.
But that was quite some turmoil that it created. So, administratively speaking, and as well as on the state level, it's good to have someone who's actually experienced that, making those shots and making those decisions. I know you said you subbed for a little bit, so
correct.
You have a little bit of an idea of a sort of a bird's eye view of what happens in the classroom, and I think that's important when someone's making decisions.
It is important, and you hit on a very sensitive point there, because we think of the students. We have the good students, we have the bad students, and then we have everybody in the middle. But what if those students that are good students are labeled difficult because they are very gregarious, they're intelligent, and they're charismatic, and they get put in a room where they say, do your homework, you have 40 minutes or whatever, study, and they get done, and they have to be challenged. Everybody else in the middle, we have opportunities. We need to improve on them, yeah. But those people, the kids that are doing that, need to have a little bit of more attention. And charisma, too, can get sometimes be
Sure.
labeled as disruptive, when in reality, maybe they should be doing, other things, helping the teacher plan a lesson, talking to other students and getting their perspective on things. Let them take a lead. I don't know what the answer is for that, but I think in all three of those quadrants, we can do a heck of a lot better, and those are the perceptions the teachers know about. They can read the student after a week. They know who's going to excel.
The discussion, I think, too, with charter school versus public school, I think that's a huge conversation. Probably need 2 hours to discuss that. But I hope they put things into perspective, because I think this country is really based on public education and every person's right to an education.
Yes.
And somehow, with the charter schools, they can be based in certain areas, but I think public education has to be maintained. I mean, that is something that's really important for every child to have access to education. And so that if there's some kind of a balance there, great. But I think the conversation's still out on that. Term limits in terms of state senators and that discussion is huge,
right.
too. What's your perspective on that?
I like the idea of term limits. I'm not so sure it's implemented appropriately. The big argument is, in 6 years, how can anybody learn the ropes?
And by
So
the time they learn the ropes,
they're gone. So just some ideas. There's no right or wrong at this point, but it's things that need to be discussed. What if the terms were extended to maybe a decade or maybe a dozen years for the state house and the legislators in it? And then what if the elections were staggered for the Senate? So, or even for the House, maybe not every. It'll be every 2 years for a person, but what if half of them were on an odd year, somebody was on an even year cycle? I mean, there's a whole host of
Sure.
issues in between that, but then you wouldn't get rid of everybody all at once and bring in new people all at once. It would be staggered, and they would have time to get their feet wet and they get time to understand the position and where everything's hidden, the nooks and crannies. So it's got to be discussed.
sure. And I think the argument is too, you don't want someone in there as a career politician, staying there for too long. But then again, by the time they learn the ropes, how can they make a difference? So that has to be addressed as well. So
Right.
I think the committee's still out on that one. The campaign process in itself and lifting, the campaign finance, cap was something that was huge, I think, and it turned every campaign, the presidential campaign, any campaign that you're running, into a totally different direction, and it I think it created a little bit of havoc in regards to who's funding and how that funding is
Right.
coming from, and the question of, is this person representing the people or representing the individuals that are actually funding them? So what's your take on that, and how do you plan on dealing with your campaign?
Yeah, first and foremost is there has to be transparency. To hold somebody accountable, to hold your legislator accountable, there has to be transparency. Anything that hides that, blurs the lines or anything like that, I would not support. As far as giving in the state races, we're pretty well regulated, and well, we were, but now the transparency issues
Sure,
have gone astray. The Freedom of Information Act doesn't apply to legislators and the upper echelon. To me, that doesn't make sense. How can you hold your legislator or your government official accountable if you don't know what they're doing? So I'm totally and completely for freedom of information, making sure everything's on the record and making sure you can go back and hold them accountable.
The presidential race.
Yes.
Wow. Entertaining.
Yes, it
Very
is.
entertaining.
It is.
I have to say. And I think the elephant in the room is always Donald Trump.
Yes.
What's your take on Donald? I'm not going to say anything. So what's your take on Donald Trump?
Well,
I don't think
first of all,
Bob wants me to say anything. So.
Let me say right here in front of everybody in Dearborn Heights, and within the viewing population, no truth to the rumor, I will be running. So I've got my hands full with the state representative job. But I think, like you said, it is entertaining. I think what is interesting, the one thing, they've always been trying to define who the Donald Trump supporter is, and it defies demographic research, but it does define is by psychographic research. So the people,
Psychographic.
the
Okay.
people that like Donald Trump also have the same psychographic personality trait as the ones that like Hillary Clinton. They are authoritative. They are authoritative. There's 4 or 5 different questions they get on these surveys on personalities, and depending how you answer these questions, they tell what type of leadership or person you like and the person you should be. So that's the first thing. I like more of a democratic republic. I like the control to be here. I like our city to take care of what the city takes care of, state takes care of the state, federal takes care of the federal. I don't think anybody can come up with a major plan, either whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Hillary, but I think it's an entertaining.
Now, from what I see, I know Hillary really, really wants the presidency. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
that's what she's working for.
Right.
In regards to Donald Trump, I don't know. I've had this conversation with other people, and I've actually brought it up, and they're like, yes, I think so. I'm not quite sure he really wants this, or he's just pushing the envelope as far as he can to see when people say that's enough. I mean, is that even in the equation at all, or do you think that he's as serious as a presidential candidate can get in regards to his comments about women, about immigrants, about diversity in general in this country. I am not saying anything anybody doesn't know. I mean,
Right.
it's very. It's not a comforting thing in regards to his comments, especially about women. Very derogatory. So, how serious is he, do you think?
I think based on the numbers and what happens after these comments, he's very serious. They're throwing fuel on the fire. I don't know a whole lot of people that, say he's absolutely the guy I want in there. So, I don't know how strong it is. I don't know how intense their feelings are. I just think maybe top line, they're saying it. Maybe, I know there's some true believers, but his numbers go up. All the experts, they're puzzled. I have no insight on that. My opinion is as good as
you have to have the answer on this
gotta
one
have the
because
answer.
I can't figure it out.
Okay. Answer is maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea.
It's a phenomenon.
It is a
definitely
phenomenon.
Yeah. And you're right. His numbers keep going up, and there's no rhyme or reason for it.
When the National Review, probably the premier intellectual conservative publication in the country since the 1950s, donates a full campaign against Donald Trump, a full issue dedicated to dissuading people to vote for him, that tells you something. But also, his numbers went up after that. So your guess is as good as mine.
Absolutely. What is the first thing that you would want to address if you won the race yesterday and you're in Lansing? What is your top 2 issues that you would like to address when you get to the state?
First and foremost, representing the people of Dearborn and making sure that Dearborn continues to grow economically. And that means, we have a hub of wealth here, not monetary wealth, but cultural wealth. What gets better culturally than Henry Ford Village and the Greenfield Village? So and this is something the mayor's proposed, Mayor O'Reilly, and I'd be 100% for it, and I'd help them in any way I could to maybe create through Pure Michigan some packages for surrounding cities, Cleveland, Chicago. They come in for a day right now. They go to the village, grab a bite to eat, and then they're out. What if we made it a 2-day package? Maybe we can get some restaurants involved from up on down Warren Avenue. Maybe we can get a little tour of some of the small shops down there on Warren Avenue, or just some of our long-time businesses, smaller businesses. We have Leon's over there, Manho's Tailoring and Clothing. I don't think there's many places that offer the services and the old-time concern about, men's attire, like Manho's. Maybe we should, do something with them. So that's one thing. Another thing is we have an area of...
And just, and I love the fact that, in regards to Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, in terms of commerce, it really, like you said, spans the borders. And our 2 mayors, Jack O'Reilly and our mayor, Mayor Dan Paletko, do an event called the Tale of 2 Cities every year. And they talk about the 2 cities and the partnership that's there and how commerce grows within the 2 representing cities. So it really is a partnership, which is a wonderful thing.
Yep. We kind of feed off of each other,
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That's important. The second thing I would do is probably look at there's other business developments. I think the Tale of 2 Cities, where they're talking about the Dix Verner area and then the east side part of Dearborn, but also, over here in the west, make sure people can come over here, if they stay at one of the hotels, and we do have a couple of new hotels going up, so they can bring in, it becomes a family weekend. They come in and, see Dearborn for what it really is, Dearborn Heights for what it really is, because there's some wonderful things here, so. That's it.
We're really fortunate. Dearborn and Dearborn Heights have really been solid, even economically speaking, in terms of commerce. Our businesses are thriving and well, and especially the food business.
Right.
You can almost open any kind of food place, and you're going to have people standing in line, and the food is really great.
It's wonderful, and just because they're Middle Eastern doesn't mean they're identical.
Right.
Certain, this one's got their recipe for the same thing that this one has a different recipe is the same thing. But also we have to mention Ford. I'm a Ford believer, you know, it's right down there on Michigan Avenue, and you know, I own
Sure.
Fords. I encourage my kids and my wife to own Fords. You know, my father's owned a Ford or a Mercury and things like that. So, you know, I'm pretty loyal to the American Auto Company, but Ford specifically, because they're here in Dearborn. I kind of feel an attachment to them.
Well, you know, I mean, they really affect our economic base in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, because when Ford was having, you know, a lot of issues, I mean, we did suffer in regards to our cities and, you know, to commerce and individuals and their homes, and, you know, and Ford used to send a lot of people from all over the country to be here, you know, 2-3 years or what have you, and, you know, businesses were thriving. And so during that automotive problem and downfall, I mean, we felt it very much so in Dearborn and Dearborn Heights because of, you know, layoffs and what have you.
Yeah.
But, you know, we're starting to feel that revitalization
Yep.
again, and things coming back into play. And I think we're diversifying too, which is really important.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for being with us.
Okay.
On
Can I mention my
Community
website?
Connection. You please, absolutely.
It's www.Sophiea, Sophiea, number 4rep, Sophiea4rep.com. Everybody, please take a look at it, and if there's any questions, you can tag me with an email after looking at the website. But thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you have any responses, questions, or comments, please go to WDHT Tv at gmail.com and let us know what you're thinking. This is Community Connection. We'll see you next time.